In 2016, a new TV show hit the digital airwaves and needed a podcast dedicated to chronicling its adventures. An elite team has been assembled for this task. Unfortunately, the world's listeners have not heard of this wonder twin duo. And although they may not be known now, in the future they will be referred to as tomorrow's legends.
Oh my God, Harley. It is great to be back, to be talking with you, hearing our intro, the show's theme music, seeing the faces of our characters. It's really hard to be away from it all for a few weeks. What are we going to do when the season finale's out?
I don't know. I was thinking the same thing. We're going to have, a 9-month break if they follow this same pattern?
That makes it sound like unbearable torture.
It does. I know. It sounds like forever.
But you know what it tells me? It's just, it sinks in the point of how much I'm enjoying doing this with you and enjoying the show and getting our feedback and developing the community, all of that. To be away from it for 3 weeks and have me missing it this much. Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's been a blast. It's been a very interesting ride so far, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of work and a lot of fun.
Yeah. I
definitely agree. But welcome everybody. Welcome back to Tomorrow's Legends.
Yay!
We are here to talk about Legends of Tomorrow, Season 1, Episode 9, entitled Left Behind. Now, before we get to it, we got a few things we want to go over, of course. One thing I wanted to make a note of is, you know how we've been recording for extended lengths, Harley? We've been kind of reaching the 2-hour mark, and then I have to do some masterful editing to chop it down to about an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's kind of a tall order.
And then we did a poll. You posted a poll on the Facebook page, what everybody likes, and everyone said the 45 to an hour.
That's true.
Length of time was their preferred one. And we haven't been able to hit that on our last 2 or 3 shows.
That's true.
What is funny is, I don't know if you've noticed, but listening to Central City Underground, Aero Squad, and Made of Steel, none of them have been under an hour in the last couple of weeks. They have all been an hour and 20, roughly.
And you know what's funny about that, Martin?
What's that?
I don't even notice as a listener. So that tells me that as long as our discussion is good and that the feedback is awesome, which it is, of course, because our feedbackers are amazing, then our listeners don't notice how long this podcast is.
Which is the same feeling as when you're watching a movie. You go in thinking, oh my God, 2.5 hour movie. If it's a really good movie, you don't even notice. Mm-hmm. So you're right. It all comes down to the entertainment value. And I love listening to Air Squad and Central City and Made of Steel. I don't care if it goes on for an hour. The only reason I notice the length of time is that when I download the files to my phone to listen to during the day, that's when I see the size of them. And it says 84 minutes or 81 minutes or what. I was like, whoa, okay, so ours aren't so bad. If we're coming in at between the 80 and 90 minute mark, and so are they. You know what? Maybe we kicked off a new trend. Maybe our lengthy podcasts has gotten everybody else doing it too. Well, to get our show underneath at least the hour and a half mark, let's get to it. We have a little bit of news. It seems like everybody has been confused with air dates because all the shows are saying they're going to play with no more hiatuses, and then all of a sudden they drop a hiatus on it or whatever, so we want to just get squared away. Legends of Tomorrow is finished its hiatus at this point in time. The finale was announced to be on May 19th, and there is no longer any breaks for us. We have an episode every week straight through to the finale.
Mm-hmm. So unless they move the finale, that's the only way we would get a break.
Exactly.
Because we have as many episodes left as we have weeks to get to May 19th, so.
There you go. So hopefully they stick with that, because the last time we thought, hey, we have no hiatus, boom, they dropped a 2-week break on us, so.
Yeah, I think they moved it up right after the announcement of the finale air date. I'm wondering if that's what happened.
Yeah, it's quite possible. And I mean, if we got a few other listeners out there for Flash and Arrow. If you guys haven't heard yet, Flash is now off for 3 weeks.
Oh, 3 weeks?
It's ridiculous, I know.
After that episode, we have to wait for 3 weeks?
I know, and I don't know why. I haven't seen an explanation why, but Flash is off 3 weeks. Arrow has one more episode next week, then they're off for 2.
Huh. Interesting.
So yeah. Supergirl I have not looked into. I know Supergirl has a 2-week break coming up, but I don't think it's right away yet, so.
Okay.
Anyway, there you go. But Legends of Tomorrow, we're straight through to May 19th, and so all you guys that are gonna be off for Flash and Arrow, please come join us, because we're still trucking along.
This time for real, we're still here.
Unless they make fools of us again in the future. We'll see.
Which is entirely possible.
Hey, it's a show about time travel, and so maybe they'll do some timey-wimey things and mess with us. Who knows? All right, so we have a little bit of pre-show feedback, because over our 2-week break, we had a couple emails come in.
Yeah, we did. In
regards to the last show, so take her away. Harley, which one do you want to read?
I can start with Sci-Fi Gene.
All right. Sci-Fi Gene, first time we've heard from them.
Yeah, I haven't, I've heard from him on, I think it's a him, so I'm sorry if it's not, but I've heard
Gene.
on...
Can you let us know, please, Sci-Fi Gene? That's actually one of those names where I don't want to make the mistake and insult you by accident.
I'm 95% sure I have heard this person on other podcasts before, so.
Okay.
But anyway, it's the first time that they have written into our podcast, and let's see what he's got to say. Greetings, Flash and Harley Quinn. I have some time travel theories that is inspired by another sci-fi TV time travel show. In the sci-fi show 12 Monkeys, the main character meets some villainous people for the first time in 1 decade. Then he discovers that they already know his name because they met his future self in a previous decade. So this is called a causality loop, and it might apply to Legends of Tomorrow as well, which means that any future time travel to the past has technically already happened. Also, it's possible that their efforts will shorten Vandal Savage's planetary reign instead of preventing it. I think my mind is going to explode.
Wow, yeah, I have to read that a couple times. I think his last point there falls into my theory about everything they're changing is speeding up the process of when he's going to take over the world. Is that what he's saying there? Their efforts will shorten Savage's planetary reign?
I don't know if he's saying, or is he saying that it'll shorten the amount of... Yeah, the shortened amount of time he's in control for.
Okay, yeah.
So he'll still, rise to power, but maybe it won't be as devastating to the world or something. Or maybe someone will actually defeat him this time around.
Okay, let's see.
I guess we don't really know the outcome other than he conquers the world.
No. So where it's mind-boggling is any future time travel to the past has technically already happened. That's where it gets confusing because it has to happen the first time. But once it has someone from the future has to come back to the past the first time, and once it's happened, does it always keep happening? No matter what, from that point of time in the past, let's say you advance 50 years to where the time traveler starts from, you advance 50 years, and then that time traveler goes back in time again, and it's that's why he calls it a causality loop. So then it begins. Oh man,
exactly.
That's
fun. It's one of the time travel paradoxes, and one way that certain TV shows, Fringe possibly have, although it's not really time travel, but how they've sort of dealt with it is to have alternate timelines. So when you go back and change something, you have completely rewritten history, and it's a completely separate timeline. So you don't keep running back into these issues of having to get back to the, back to the future to go back to the past, and it just kind of spirals in on itself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Your email equals mind blown.
I agree. This is why I love time travel, though.
Yeah.
There's so many different theories and different ways to approach it and different ways to completely screw it up. That's why it's pretty fantastic.
All right. Well, he's got something right at the end there, too.
He does, yeah. So to finish off, on another subject, I was thinking that since you enjoy finding quotes in the show, maybe you could record quotes from the show itself, then play each one individually and have listeners vote for their favorite quote. So we could institute a quote of the week.
Hey.
That's like my favorite thing ever. I love Quote of the Week.
Cool idea.
I miss podcasts doing that, but yeah, let's try and do that next week. It's a shame because this week it really had so many great quotes. I was listening to that episode watching that episode. I'm like, that's a great quote. That's another great quote.
Well, I tell you what, how about this? As we're working through the show, if you remember ones that you like, add them to our show notes and we'll do it at the very end.
Do it at the end? Okay, I'll try and remember.
Okay.
If not, since it's kind of last minute, we'll just do it next week.
Yeah. All right, well, hey, thanks, Sci-Fi Gene. It's great to have you come on board and great to hear from you.
Yeah, great theories. Love it.
Please keep coming back. All right, so then we had another email pre-show feedback. This one coming from Miss Patty Spivot herself, my better half. All right, so she writes in, I agree with everyone about the romantic storylines, really. Is there anyone out there that likes them? It's just not what the show is all about. It's so distracting. And really, what was the purpose of that whole Ray Kendra married storyline? They had to buy a house and find furniture to pack and move, and then when they moved in, they had no idea they were actually going to find Savage, let alone meet him next door. Why go undercover in that way? And same with Sara. Other than a bit of character development, what was the purpose of that storyline with the other nurse? I guess for both of the above, to some degree, it was the writer's way of commenting on the social snapshot of that era, but the smarmy doctor in the beginning and the bigoted realtor did the same thing. Yeah,
that's true.
Those
are all valid points.
All valid points. So she continues, love the Elvis podcast opening. So great. Yeah, you know what? That's the first feedback we've gotten about one of our little fun intros that we've done.
That's true. It did turn out really good, though, I must say. I think that was the best one we've done.
Well, thanks. Actually, I did enjoy it. Our whole episodes are fun. So, actually, just to interrupt this whole email, we would love to hear from everybody if you guys are enjoying the little fun things that we're adding to the show, the clips from movies and the soundtracks and music, whatever. I mean, because me and Harley are having fun doing it. So as long as you guys are enjoying it, let us know. 'Cause, if you're not enjoying it and it's annoying to you guys, we want to know, and then we'll stop doing it.
Do a more traditional intro.
Yeah, but we're having fun with it. So,
yeah.
Anyway, so she continues. During the episode, I was loving the Back to the Future tidbits as well. It's so fun that the writers have been dropping tons of little references throughout all of the episodes. I also thought they did a great job with the costumes and styling. Kendra looked great. Jax's wingtip shoes were awesome. And I also loved Rip and Leonard as the FBI detectives. So great. Yes, definitely. They're doing good with the wardrobe and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Time periods are going through.
Yeah.
Cool observation about Ray being able to shrink the dagger. I hope that wasn't just a mistake. So many possibilities would open up. What if he could hold on to everyone and shrink them all? They'd be able to get in and out of all kinds of good and bad situations. Yeah, good point. We haven't seen him try to shrink another person with him yet, so that's interesting.
That would be cool, though, if he could do that.
That would be. I'm glad you two spoke about Savage's apparent selective ability to see, feel Kendra. I was wondering how he didn't know she was nearby, especially when they showed up at her door. Or did he? And that's why Savage and the little missus showed up at the door with the casserole. He was just checking things out under that cover. I wonder if he knows Carter and Kendra lose their memory every time. Yeah, good question.
Oh, yeah.
Does he have to always wait until they emerge before he can kill them? Does he need Carter to be there too? I think he does have to wait for them to emerge, because that's when they emerge, then that's when they have their powers, and that's what
exactly
take from
them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And does Carter need to be there too? Yeah, I think they both have to be there, and he has to kill them both at the same time, doesn't it?
Yeah, he just doesn't realize what era he's thinking that this would have been Kendra from the 1950s era, and she just hadn't emerged, so she hasn't met Carter yet.
Yeah, okay.
But in reality, he's already killed Carter for the era that she's actually from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I was also curious why he was posing as a husband and a doctor in some low-profile little town. In the past episodes, he has been seemingly very removed from society in secret labs and underground, but at the same time very politically involved. Why would he choose to hang out so domestically in this time period? It seems to go so strongly against his fundamental character. Like, it would have wasted so much of his precious evil time and energy to have to woo some poor lady and convince her to marry him, and also to be this doctor and have to fraternize day to day with colleagues, etc., and care for patients and do paperwork and be nice. Can you imagine Vandal Savage in a tux, meeting in-laws and cutting the cake and getting married? And wow, his quote-unquote wife had no idea what danger she was in. Don't burn the dinner, honey.
That's really funny, and that was exactly how I felt about all of that, and I completely agree. Also, not all doctors are nice, just sidebar.
There you go. And this is why I love my Patty. Oh, she's just got a great perspective on things.
That was quite funny.
So she finishes off, I agree with Flash's observation about the timing of them cloaking the Wave Runner, and again, they brought Betty onto the ship to give her medical attention, just like they did with young Martin Stein, and these don't seem to be a problem. More and more people in the past are becoming aware of them as time travelers, but it doesn't seem to matter. Maybe this goes along with your comic book science, comic book time travel? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, show convenience. You could probably say that Betty was so out of it that she didn't realize where she was, and
it just looked like a doctor's hospital tour.
Yeah, exactly.
True. I love the little bonus ending add-on Flash. It's okay to change your mind. I hope I didn't influence your change of opinions, though. Your fan, Just Lisa, a.k.a. Patty Spivot. Yes, you are Patty Spivot. Do not have to ask that question again. We have deemed you Patty.
Yeah, we've named you. You don't get a choice.
But thanks for saying that you love my little add-on there. I snuck that in. Even Harley didn't know I was going to do that. What did you think, Harley, my little...
I liked it. I thought it was good. I mean, I did not go back and rewatch the episode for a third time to see if I liked it better after we had talked about it, but I still think that the horror vibe, I just didn't care for the creature feature feel. It's not my thing. I don't really like those type of movies. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm more of like a psycho thriller type of American Horror Story kind of horror, not so much like the creature features from the 50s and 60s. Just not my thing.
And just a final answer, she's saying she hopes she didn't influence my change of opinions. Well, you do in a little way when we watch the show together, and it's not a bad thing because a lot of the times I'm watching it before she does, and then she comes over and we watch it again together, but it's the first time for her, second time for me, and I get to watch it through her reactions and her emotional ups and downs of what's happening on the show, and she's very reactive to things. You know, she's very jumpy to scary moments and laughs a lot to the funny parts. So when I get to relive it through her reactions, it actually makes it more enjoyable for me. And if I was really upset with something, then I see how she's reacting to it. It kind of pulls me back and go, oh, wait a sec. Actually, maybe that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's no problem at all with her. There's no worry about her influencing me because it changes my feeling sometimes when I see how much she enjoys something or gets affected by something. And yeah, no worries there. So thank you, Miss Patty Spivot, for your very in-depth email. I love that you keep doing that.
Well.
All right, so let's move on to this episode. On to the show. General impressions. What was before we dive into key points, what was your feeling of this episode, Harley?
I loved this episode.
Me too.
It was really good to be back. It was action-packed. There was just so much going on at all times. It just kind of went from one thing to the next, and then you're like, oh, did that really just happen? And then there's this whole big, huge twist that, I mean, it just keeps coming one after the next after the next. So it was a lot of fun, and I just really enjoyed it. That was pretty much it. I mean, what about you?
To me, this is how you come back after a hiatus. Yeah. This is how you do it. There's action, suspense, thrills, humor, twists, surprises, just plain old fun all around. Because we all know, viewers, after watching the Arrow episode, coming back after a month, and the fallout from that, how much garbage that episode was. And then I
did not care for that episode either.
And then you have the Flash coming back, and the Flash was spectacular. I mean, yeah, this is how you do it. It was a fun episode. This made you miss it and realize what we were missing. Great episode overall, definitely. You know, and we'll get to it later on, but the Cronos twist was not obvious. I did not see it coming at all. We'll talk more about that later. Did you see that coming?
No, I didn't at all. And as I was watching it, I was like, should I have seen that coming? but I didn't. So
yeah.
I don't know. It completely surprised me. Like, because I was like, why did he take Snart? And I'm like, I don't get it. Why wouldn't he go after Rip or like someone else? And, you know, and up until he takes the helmet off, I was like, I probably should have seen that coming.
Well, I don't know. They covered it really, really well.
Yeah, I definitely, up until the start of the episode, I don't think there are any hints that would have given it away. But then once he appears and takes Snart, I think you're supposed to quickly draw that conclusion before he actually reveals himself.
Well, because he even says, before he takes the helmet off, he's like, you should have figured it out by now.
I know, that's why I was like, oh, should I have figured it out by now? She's like, you're the smart one. I'm like, is he talking to me?
He's talking to us. But you know what happened upon the second viewing I watched tonight before we started this? In the beginning, there's always somebody, one of the actors, and it's usually Rip, who says, previously on Legends of Tomorrow. And this time it was Heatwave saying, previously on Legends of Tomorrow. And that should have been the biggest clue right there that, oh my, is he coming back?
I didn't even pick up on that.
I missed it the first time too. You watch it the second time?
Yeah, and I didn't catch it that time either.
All right. Sort of going with Sci-Fi Gene's request, I just want to, since we're talking about this point, I will play for you. Now listen closely. It is Heatwave saying previously.
Previously on Legends of Tomorrow.
Oh my god.
Hear
I mean, he growl it, so I wasn't like, oh, that's Heatwave. He didn't say, like, previously on...
Yeah, it was in Heatwave's voice, pretty much.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, probably should have figured that out.
I mean, it was a blatant, obvious hint that at least the actor is coming back, and you could have only surmised that, oh, it must be Heatwave, but if you had noticed it, not only the really, really observant would maybe have thought, no, he is Cronos. And I'm curious, all our listeners, how many of them had ever thought, as a theory, Heatwave is Cronos? Because I don't know if we've seen anybody post about that or anything, have we?
I haven't seen anything saying that, like, you know, that anybody sent to us personally. I always assumed Cronos was some other person.
Was Cronos from the future. So.
Yeah, that he was just another character we would eventually learn more about, and boy, did we ever. That was not what I was expecting.
Well, and once he grabbed them, I mean, at that point in time, we're thinking it's Cronos.
Yeah.
So what was the plan from the get-go? Was he always planning to take Snart? Or was it a backup measure to taking Rip because he couldn't get Rip, so he took Snart? Or was he always planning to take Snart?
Since it's always been Heatwave, well, you know, Cronos and Heatwave are the same person, I think it's always been about Snart. I think that's why he came after them to begin with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're guessing that he was after Snart the whole time, but the team just assumed he was after Rip since he's a bounty hunter trained by the Time Masters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what we as viewers assumed as well.
Yeah, that was our assumption because we have no idea who this guy is. He shows up. Rip appears to know who he is. So he's clearly been following Rip. But I guess maybe after Cronos / Heatwave, or so after Heatwave was turned into Cronos, maybe he didn't, you know, just had to pick a time and find Rip and kind of follow the trail from there. So that's why Rip knew who he was. And then when he picked up the team, he was like hot on his trail. And so I think he was after Snart the whole time, but because the team obviously didn't know who he was, they just assumed he was after Rip because Rip deserted the Time Masters.
Right. Yeah, well, we'll talk more about Mick being Cronos later on. It blew us away. It was a great reveal, for sure.
Yeah, it really was.
We'll get to that. But you made a little point here about the actor playing Jax.
I did.
You said something about his accent. I had no idea what you were talking about. What do you mean his accent? He sounds like a typical American kid and then you played for me a clip of him being in a commercial and an interview, and he is British.
He is. The Ford commercial that they aired during this show. I heard him talk and I was like, what? Wait a minute.
He's more British sounding than the guy playing Rip Hunter.
Right.
So when you mention the accent, you're actually talking about his American accent, because holy cow, is he really good at doing an American accent.
He does do a good American accent. I had no clue this guy was not an American, so that's pretty funny.
And coming from you, living down in Atlanta, that's a good props to him.
Yeah, seriously.
But what I noticed, though, when you played me that clip of him in the Ford commercial, even when he's speaking in his native British tongue, he cuts his words off. He has that real short talk, and that's where it comes from. That's why his American accent still has it.
Mm-hmm.
So at least that is solved. I will never have to wonder about that again. Why he's talking like that.
Yeah, exactly. So now you know why.
Now I know why.
That is British coming through.
Oh, man. All right, so the episode opens up, and we're stranded in 1958.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of right where we left off. Now, they actually re-showed it a little bit from a couple different angles, a little bit more from inside the ship as to why they're flying away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because Cronos has taken over.
Yep. He took over the ship and kind of forced their hand and sent them in a free fall through time. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting.
Now, here's something pretty funny, because when they were on the ship and they realized what was happening, that they time jumped, Snart yells out, "The ladies are left behind!" And Jack says, "What about Ray?" And Snart's like, "As I said."
That was a good quote. I don't know if it would make my top 4, but it was quite funny.
It was just funny, and it was in the heat of the moment as the ship is shaking and rumbling, and they're hanging on to the handrails because it's flying away. I mean, it was just something funny that I kind of missed the first time through. It was the second watch that I picked up on the humor there.
Oh yeah, it was so funny.
So now we see Kendra, Ray, and Sara as they decide that they can no longer wait around.
Yeah, it didn't really take Sara very long to.
Well, it was putting it right on screen. It said 10 minutes later. Yeah. And at that point, that's where Sarah is quick to lose hope. She's like, "They're not coming back. Let's get out of here." Only 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, to their points, if you've got a time machine, you just return to the point you disappeared from. And I mean, I get that. And we see later why that doesn't happen, and we get an explanation for it.
Yeah, but still, I mean.
But I can understand, it's like, okay, yeah, they've got a time machine. They haven't showed up by now. They're not going to show up type of thing.
But you can think that, okay, maybe something's happened. It's taken them a little bit before they come back. I don't know, but I guess, yeah, your point being that because it's a time machine, they can come back to the exact point they left would have been no big deal. It's just, it just felt like she gave in pretty quick while Ray was still trying to be optimistic, and she was not.
I agree, and it's very in tune with their characters to do that too, for sure. Yeah.
So then when they go to take off, they hotwire the car, and it now says, was it 10 hours later or something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
They go to hotwire the car and they drive off, and it shows them getting a little apartment, and it says Hub City. Now there's a couple of posts on Facebook about that, and we had to look it up, but Hub City in the comics is where Blue Beetle and The Question are from, which are 2 other DC characters.
Okay, yeah, I'm not very familiar with them at all.
I find it interesting because Blue Beetle is known as Ted Kord, and we've seen throughout Flash and Arrow, and I don't know if we've seen on Legends yet, we've seen reference to Kord Industries quite often.
That's right, we have.
So
okay, so that's that could be a tie-in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, just a little reference point. Maybe they'll bring something around. Who knows? But anyway.
That would definitely be interesting, because this isn't the first, CW show that we've gotten introduced to another small city on, for various reasons, because Jessie Quick, I'm just calling her Jessie Quick, Jessie Wells, she disappears to Opal City, right?
Yeah, Opal City, and Opal City is another, who is it that's from Opal City?
Someone actually posted about it on Facebook, and it's slipped my mind, but it was another one of those little references to another character that they might be able to bring in. So
totally. So now we advance to 2 years' time, because you see their apartment, and at the moment, because you just see them in a bare bones apartment, and then Sarah's like, "We should get some furniture for this place," And all of a sudden you see a time lapse of them getting furniture and all that. And I was thinking, wait a second, do they have money? What are they doing? But then you find out 2 years have passed.
Well, I think that point was only 10 weeks. I think that was the 10-week mark.
You're right, 10 weeks. Okay, so did they all go get jobs? And...
I don't know if they had jobs at that point, but I guess you're right. Where would money have come from? So they were all probably doing something.
Yeah.
I know later we see Ray as a professor, and Kendra states that she was a librarian.
Right, I asked you about that because I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
But I don't think Sara was working, was she?
Well, at that point, she's at the League of Assassins. So at this 10-week mark, I guess we have to assume that they've found some way to generate money. They have to be doing something. Maybe. But I don't think we're quite sure what it is.
All right.
At least I wasn't.
It still surprised me, like, after that time lapse, we get to the mark where they're at 2 years. I'm like, holy, 2 years have passed.
I know.
I wasn't expecting that at all. That was a twist in the story. Like, holy, okay, they've now spent 2 years together living and building a life and being regular people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It explains a lot later in the episode.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like you said, I mean, it actually suited Ray being a physics teacher.
I thought so. I thought he looked very comfortable up there. I mean, he was at least teaching something science and I don't know if it was science or engineering or it was something technological, but for him, it's pretty much the Dark Ages. So, yeah. But I felt that it suited him.
Yeah, I was wondering though, was he teaching science beyond what they should actually know at that time period?
I don't think that he was. I think he was teaching probably the most advanced physics class or engineering class or whatever that they were offering. Mm-hmm. But I think he just threw in there as a little joke because it came up through conversation. He's like, apparently Bill Gates' father questions the fact that, he's like, well, couldn't that lead to miniaturizing an atom or something? And he's like, yeah, but, don't try that for 40 years. He tried to pass it off as a joke, but really, he's like, no, really, like, you can't do that for 40 years.
Right, so, yeah.
So I thought that was pretty funny, but I don't think he was teaching anything beyond what would have been an acceptable advancement. Yeah. I didn't see him as like the cutting edge professor. I saw him as the respected, tenured professor, but just well versed in his field.
Okay. So then after that, everybody gets reunited because the spaceship shows up.
Yeah, they come back. He comes back for them.
Yeah. But they're 2 years late.
Exactly. I like that quote. It says, sorry, I'm late.
You're going to have to keep track. You're going to have to keep a notepad or something. Keep track of the quotes that you remember so we can find them later.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't remember which ones they were. There were some that were very, very good. Like, they were just fantastic quotes. And it was a different character each time. But I might have to rewatch and figure out what it is.
Right. So, the ship comes back, they get picked up, and Kendra's really excited about it, but Ray is a little bit baffled. He's
annoyed.
I think he's settled into his life so comfortably, he's happy, because he didn't think he could ever be happy again, as he stated. Mm-hmm. So he was a little bit upset that he's going to have to give that up.
Oh, yeah.
I did find Kendra a little bit cold to that, though. She kind of just tossed everything aside. All their life, their time together, their possessions, everything that they had done in the last 2 years. She was just like rip a tablecloth out from underneath everything. And I was a little bit bothered by how she had no sentimentality towards that.
Yeah, I thought that was a little strange, but I'm trying to decide. I try and go back and be like, is that in character for her? Because she is a person who's reincarnated, and so she's used to experiencing several lives and trying to incorporate all of that knowledge into one new life. So it's almost like when something different comes along, it's like she kind of moves on to that more quickly. So okay. I think it might be in character for her, but I did, just on a personal level, it was like, I felt bad for Ray. I was like, oh, that's terrible.
I did. I felt bad for him. You could see it in his face. He looked hurt.
Yeah, he was really upset.
Yeah, exactly. So now when they're walking on the ship, this comes up to a point, that we wanted to talk about because it was it answered some questions, but it brought up some confusing things we had to clarify.
Yes.
When they're on the ship and Ray is talking to Dr. Stein, he's like, "Why are you guys 2 years late? Why can't you go back again to the time where you first left us and get us then?"
Mm-hmm.
And Stein says we can't, and Ray then says, "Oh yeah, because if we go back to events that we previously participated in, time will fold up in on itself, so we can't go back."
Right.
All right. So let's explain that a little bit, because you say that answers that question. They can't raise paradox questions because they can't revisit events they've already influenced.
Right.
Let's clear that up a little bit.
I was about to say this answers the causality loop thing that Sci-Fi Gene brought up, but it actually doesn't. But what it does address is that I think it was on our last episode that we were discussing about if they could go back to previous time periods and what would happen, because now that, they've influenced these events and then they go back, how would that work? I guess they would have to avoid themselves or what they would have to do. But then Ray's statement to me was saying, oh, well, we've already been to these events, so we can no longer go back there because it'll, destroy time or whatever.
Right.
So they can't have those kinds of paradoxes, I guess, because they're just saying, they're basically dismissing the issue, saying, oh, well, we've already been to this specific time in this event, so we'll never be able to go back there. So that's the show's way of kind of addressing that paradox.
Because they've already done things to influence or change in that time frame, so if they went back again, they can't rechange things they've already changed.
Kind of. They're saying they can't go back because time will fold in on itself or disappear or whatever that means.
All right.
Nobody knows what that means. I think that's their way of saying it's bad and we can't do it, so we won't.
Right. So it's, like you said, it's the show establishing some of their time travel rules.
Yep. Exactly.
Right. Okay. So now this comes to the next part. You have a question that this brings up.
Oh, yes. This drove me crazy.
Yeah.
It's sort of driving me crazy. So let's talk through it.
Let's talk.
So after they have stated this, we soon learn within the next couple of scenes who Cronos really is. Cronos is Mick Rory. So how come he can get away with going back to these other events that he's quote-unquote influenced as Mick Rory? Because he still is exactly the same. Okay, he is physically the same person, but we can debate mental and how he's changed in psychology another time. But physically, he is still Mick Rory. He is still the same Mick Rory that was, there at the Waverider when Cronos has shown up before. So how did time not explode or fold in on itself or whatever bad thing that they're saying that they can no longer go back to these other events? So how can he just show up at the events that he was already in, even though he's, I guess technically because he's different?
Right. So that's an awesome question. So in discussing it, does this have to do with the fact that Mick is disguised as Cronos, thus not actually facing himself and not recognizing himself, therefore time won't fold in upon itself? Meaning they can't go back in time and either face or confront themselves as themselves. That's what would cause time to fold, because they've already been there, they've already affected that part of time. So if they came back to that timeline and faced themselves, that's what would cause the time folding. But since he can't, when he is Heatwave, for the first time in whatever time period he is there as Heatwave, Cronos is coming back from the future disguised in that outfit. Heatwave himself does not recognize that that's his future self. He just sees Cronos. So because there's not that acknowledgement that's me, I think that's the loophole that time will be destroyed, because he doesn't recognize himself, he doesn't see himself.
Okay, so when they're saying they can't revisit the events they've already influenced, is that, I guess that's their way of saying they can't see themselves again?
That's
maybe?
My feeling. So I'm thinking
it's the only way that works, I guess.
Yeah, so I think they could go back to 1958, but they couldn't go back to that town. They could go anywhere else in the world. They just can't go back to where they would potentially run into themselves. is
right.
how I think it is.
And I can see that. I mean, that's the only way that this works.
Hey, anybody else out there? You got something you could add to this? Quantum physics, time travel. That's quite a.
There's a lot going on here.
So.
And
hopefully you listeners are following along with what we're trying to get at here.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna make this my couch question.
Okay.
Because it's a great question and it will spark lots of discussion.
Yeah,
so.
For sure. I hope so. I want it. Lots of discussion. Yep. Now so moving on, because we could probably talk about that for a very long time, but in a very similar vein, we come to Sara, because she takes off and goes to rejoin the League of Assassins, but essentially she's joining it for the first time. She becomes a member of the League 50 years before she was initially trained by the same order. So, Ra's al Ghul would then recognize her in theory when Nyssa rescues her from Lian Yu in 2008.
Yeah.
Hypothesizing here.
Yeah. So, basically, since she's been part of the League from 1958 to 1960, when she shows up again in 2008 and obviously has no memory of having done that because technically she hasn't done it yet.
Yes, the first time.
See, here's the thing. So, and this is something we won't see. I guess this is something we can't really say that it's a plot hole or whatever because we're never going to see it on screen. But it's like Ra's al Ghul would have had to recognize her. But because they've already had this conversation of him understanding that they're from the future, if he's smart, he won't bring it up because what's the point? But at the same time, it's just kind of mind-boggling to
because you would think
see her do that and influence her own future like that.
Well, exactly. You would think it would change her future for sure, and he would recognize her just because she gave him a whack of future knowledge. She told him about his second daughter and what her name's going to be, Nyssa. And then she said, make sure you send her to the island at this time, basically to rescue her. Like she sent her there to rescue herself.
I know, that's what I'm asking. I was like, so did she save herself?
Yeah.
But if she hasn't been there before to influence her being saved in the first place, see, this is the causality loop thing.
But we never did, in watching Arrow, they never did show Sarah's history with Ra's and with the League hardly at all, so we don't know. Maybe he did recognize her. Maybe they did have some little agreement going on. That's why she is as good as she was.
I think he probably recognized her, but if he's a wise man, he won't say anything.
Yeah, hard to say. All right, let's move on.
I know.
All
could
right.
Debate that one for a while.
We could. So now we're at the point where Cronos has Snart handcuffed to the railing on his ship, and he says, you should have figured it out by now, and takes off the helmet.
And I feel like he was talking to me.
Yes. But what a reveal, as we already stated in the beginning, that really floored me, jaw-dropping type of reveal. It really, really took me off. It surprised me.
Oh yeah, me too.
I have to give all the props to Wentworth Miller for his acting here. He looked genuinely scared. He even had tears in his eyes. His performance was amazing.
Oh yeah, it was perfect. Like the way he played that reaction was so perfect. Like how I saw him react was exactly how I felt.
Yeah, exactly. And then, even as the scene continued on, when they were having their argument as to why he's doing it, and Snart is trying to figure it out, the amount of emotion that was coming out of him, because like I said, he was tearing up. He was scared, he was angry, and he was emotionally upset. And we have not seen Captain Cold lose his cool like that.
No, we haven't.
Ever. And
I'm sure not.
It was amazing. So he was, I think he was really hurting to see his friend this far gone, even though he left him.
Well, he's the cause of it.
He's the cause of it, but still, yeah, just, anyway, it just an amazing, and great job on the writers to essentially pull the wool over our eyes on that one to fool us.
Oh, yeah.
And not have us ever think that Mick could be Cronos. It was great all around. It was great.
Oh, yeah. That never occurred to me. Not even once. It was great.
Yeah. Now then, as Mick's giving him basically his backstory, he says that the Time Masters came and found him, and they took him to the vanishing point, where time doesn't exist in the same way.
I kind of liked this comment. It was interesting, but in an offhand way, it sort of gives us a little bit more information about the vanishing point, because we have very little information about it, period. I always think of it as like a singularity, like a black hole kind of,
right.
That once you get to that point, that's where, time stops, time ends, which is what they call it, which is, why it's called the vanishing point. But then with him further describing it, that time doesn't quite exist the same way, that's what made me kind of think of that in that way, like similar to a black hole, but without all the destructive properties, I guess.
Well, and it was a great explanation, because when he continues on, he says, I have trained for lifetimes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it makes you realize that for him, he was gone for hundreds of years training.
Mm-hmm. If not thousands.
Yeah, to be this balance. So it really ties into, okay, he is Cronos, and that's why he's so good. That's why every time that they've faced him, Cronos single-handedly can take them all on and essentially beat them in a fight.
Exactly, because he knows what everybody can do.
Yeah.
And he's had so much time to prepare for them. And, he's really not the same person. This is what I meant by, physically he's the same person, but mentally he is not the same person at all.
And he is no longer he's not seeming like the dummy anymore. It looks like he's learnt a lot.
And he's not quite as hot-headed.
No.
You'll notice.
He had nothing to do with fire, yeah. But that's when he explains, I used to think fire was the most beautiful thing, but no, it's revenge.
That's vengeance. That's
vengeance.
That was one of the quotes, and I think in that same scene, Snart has another quote as well, which I don't know off the top of my head, but it's fantastic. So good. There's so many in this episode. It's bad.
But yeah, so talking with Rory, what was having me emotionally, what's the word I'm thinking? It was just it was having the emotion just draining out of me, was how mad he was and hateful and vengeful towards Snart. And I'm thinking, where did this come from? Snart chose the good guys over him, but it wasn't like he was giving up on his friend. He was trying to bring his friend along with him. So Rory was so mad. He was threatening to kill Snart's sister over and over and over in front of him. Wow, has he lost it? And I'm wondering if it's these lifetimes of training, and he's just been stewing in this anger and hatred that I wonder if he is so far gone. Like, man, the anger towards Snart was unbelievable.
Yeah, well, it was crazy, but he sort of talks about it before then. He says, because he's like, I was always coming back for you. And his response is, you must have lost track of time. And then he talks about how he was eating rats or something like that. He was barely surviving when they found him. Well, who are they? The Time Masters. That's when we got that reveal. And so I think that was part of it. He was betrayed, he was abandoned, and Snart never came back. It's like, you must have lost track of time.
So it could be kind of the same thing for Ray and Kendra. All of a sudden 2 years went by. So for poor Mick, who knows how much time went by?
Yeah, who
before
knows?
the Time Masters came back. Yeah.
We still don't know when or where he was left.
That's the question. My next question. Where was that forest? Where and when?
And if Ray's comment holds, Leonard cannot return to that exact point and pick up Heatwave because he can't influence an event he's already participated in.
Jeez.
Crazy.
Head explode.
I know.
So, and then, we could just go on and on and on about that apart.
I know.
Because it was just an amazing, that 5 minutes of episode was phenomenal. Some of the best we've seen, I think, on this TV show so far.
Absolutely. It was great.
So that brings me to a little bit more of a fun question then. Now, is that ship that they're on, that when they're dealing with each other, is that Cronos' time ship, or is that the drop ship? Because all we saw was, or all we heard was, they got on the drop ship and left the Waverider. So,
I think they transferred to his ship.
Because it looked exactly the same. It looked very similar to the Waverider.
Yeah, I would assume that they transferred to his own ship. They took the jump ship to his ship. And
so the Waverider is now short the jump ship. And,
yep. That'll be interesting. I wonder how they're going to deal with that. They're going to have to address how they get that back. Because I'm sure they'll get it back.
Yeah, they might have more than one, but... okay, so yeah, because that makes sense. Sorry, I forgot for a second that he actually had his own AI, but did you notice that the AI was male?
I did, and I was like, oh, there goes our theory, but we didn't get a name.
We didn't get a name of it, yeah, so...
But he was male, and I was like, oh, there goes that theory.
Oh, boy. Anyway, awesome sequence for sure.
Oh,
so
good.
Moving forward, now we're going to come to Nanda Parbat, which all the Arrow viewers know very well because we spent an entire season bouncing back and forth to there.
Yes. Exactly how long does it take to get to Nanda Parbat?
Nanda, I can't believe we're back here again, Parbat.
Exactly.
There's one of your quotes.
That was one for sure. That is one.
So this is where Sara originally trained with the League of Assassins. This is where their base of operations are. And here we are in 1960s version of it. Sara has now been there for 2 years. And we see a young Talia al Ghul.
I just thought that was cool.
Is that her last name? Would she be Talia al Ghul? I guess so.
Yeah, she would.
So, yeah, I guess she's a very famous character from the Batman side of things as an adult, when she's an adult Talia.
Yes, she is.
So it was cool to see her there. I don't know if they're going to do much more with her. Other than that, they were just kind of presenting like, hey, here's the character. I don't know if they're going to do much more with her other than...
I don't think so. I think it was just a nice nod, just a nod to DC fans, like a little Easter egg kind of thing.
Right.
Because especially since she is so prominent in the Batman world, I would be shocked if she doesn't... And I haven't seen Batman versus Superman, but I'm guessing she doesn't appear in that movie, but in theory she could appear in the next one. I don't know. You never know. She's such a Batman character, though.
Although Arrow has stolen quite a few things from the Batman universe, so who knows?
It's very true.
I just think it was a nod, just a little cool thing to add in there.
I think so, too.
So, now Sara, she doesn't want to be rescued. She seems like she is back at home. She's right where she feels at home. She's comfortable.
She's found peace with the League of Assassins.
Yeah.
No one has ever said that.
No, I mean, and that's like her true home. She's comfortable there. She even told Laurel and Arrow once that that's why she went back, because that's her home.
Yeah, and I can see that. I think after what she went through on the island and then getting, I guess, rescued by the League of Assassins, or however that worked, we never really get that story. We've never gotten that story. So I wonder if that's something they might explore more, but it would be interesting to know the answer to how exactly she did get from the island to being dead again to being with the League of Assassins.
And that might be more of an Arrow story than a Legend story. Who knows?
Yeah, but with her on Legends, I doubt they're going to address it on Arrow.
Exactly. So we're left to just wonder.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, so you've got a note here about time drift.
Ah, yes.
Go on about that for me, because I'm a little bit lost there, what you're talking about.
All right. So this is where they're saying that you start to lose ties with your former self if you get stuck in a time period. So,
okay, first of all, where were they saying that? Because I cannot recall.
It's within, I think it's when they're in, Nanda Parbat. I think it's when they're in the prison cell. Yeah, it is. It's when they're all in the prison cell, because Sara they go to rescue her, and then she sounds the alarm, and she knows everything about them, like who they are. She's like, okay, keep those two separated. Takes the Atom suit from Ray, and then puts them all in the cell, and is like, okay, so sorry, too bad, you're intruding, so we're going to kill you, because that's what happens here. And so that's when they're trying to explain. They're like, well, why is she doing this? And Ray's like, I can't believe I'm back here, and that whole thing. And so Rip was trying to explain to them why that happened. And then, so what he's basically saying is that you kind of start to accept and become this new person based on this new life. And so you lose touch with any other life or time period that you may have been a part of because you've started to assimilate into this one. And I think it works differently for different people. So for Sara, she's always felt at home with the League of Assassins, and she wanted to be there, so this is where she went, and she just re-assimilated back into that culture and is like, nothing is coming in between me and this. I serve Ra's al Ghul. You're a trespasser, so you're going to get killed because this is my new reality. And she's kind of lost herself in that.
Okay.
And so, and Kendra talks about this a little bit too, because she says that she was starting to forget her past lives for the 2 years that her and Ray were stuck in, the late 1950s and 60s. And then, and that she couldn't use her hawk powers either. And so, but then, you see that those come back once she's back with the team because she uses them later, so.
Okay. I get you now more. What's the way I just understood you is when they're stuck in a time period and time is continuing on, the longer they're there, the more they're losing touch with where they're from and the future, time travel, all that stuff. They're starting to become part of that time period.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. So they call it time drifting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So, you said everybody is saying Ra's al Ghul differently in this episode? I didn't even notice that.
Oh, yeah. There's a Ra's al Ghul, there's a Raish al Ghul, there's a Raj al Ghul.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Sara, because I think the first time she says it, she says Raz. And then later she says Raish. And then Rip calls him Raj, like with a J. Like
he's on Big Bang Theory.
Yes, exactly. Like Big Bang Theory. And I was just like, well, I wonder if they did that on purpose. That'd be really funny.
Because you would think they would notice on set while they're acting, like behind the scenes while they're filming, you think people would notice, why is everybody saying it differently?
I know. And that's why I think they did it on purpose, just as a nod to because everyone has a different pronunciation on Arrow too, but each character is at least consistent. At this time, like it was just different every single time someone said it. It felt like it was really funny.
Okay, so how do you say it, Harley?
I usually just say Raz because it's easier.
Like R-A-Z, that's how I look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Raz, yeah, Ra's al Ghul. Because I think Raish sounds weird.
I think that's the Arabic pronunciation.
Oh, okay.
But I don't speak Arabic, so.
Oh, neither do
I don't know.
Alright, so I found them all, strung them all together. Here's how everybody is saying Ra's al Ghul's name.
Ra's al Ghul.
Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul.
Raish al Ghul.
Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul.
Raish al Ghul.
Perfect.
You were right, Arlie. Listen to that. That's pretty funny.
Right?
Alright, so moving on. I was kind of laughing. When you're laughing at that part, I kind of laughed at the next bit. When Rip wants to challenge, I have a right to challenge someone to a duel to save my skin, basically. And he challenges Ra's.
Well, I think he has to, right? Isn't that the way it works? Trial by combat is always Ra's is always the challenger.
Oh, and then he gets to decide if he wants to fight her or choose his champion.
Yeah, because we kind of saw that on Arrow because Oliver steps in at some point.
Yeah.
Or
Oliver steps in to fight for Nyssa.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I thought it was funny because I'm like, oh, do you not realize who Ra's is? He's hundreds of years old, master swordsman.
I know.
Rip, you're gonna die in seconds.
That's exactly what I was thinking, but then he's all like, well, I studied the history of the League of Assassins, so I'm like, well, maybe he has some mad sword skills up his sleeve, I don't know.
Maybe. But then it ends up being Sara and Kendra, which is one of the best fight sequences we have seen yet on this show, oh my god, the choreography was amazing. When Kendra's wings finally popped out and she did that flying slam into the wall, it was awesome.
Oh yeah. That was really good. I really enjoyed I enjoyed all the fight sequences in this episode, but that one was particularly great.
That one was pretty cool. I mean, it goes from there and it slides into when Cronos crashes the quote-unquote party.
Yep.
I mean, Sara has a good fight with him.
Yeah, that was a good sequence, too.
Yeah, but I loved it when the smoothness of all of them working together as a team, they seemed like they finally gelled together. It was a good team effort to take him down. Because you saw Kendra would fly in, take a couple shots, and then fly out. And Sara would jump in and take a few shots and jump out, and then Ray would, tap him on the shoulder, spin around, uppercut, boom, 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 jab, jab. Like, Ray had the upper hand in the hand-to-hand fighting. Like, go Ray.
Yeah,
Holy
he
cow.
did.
That was awesome. And then, he gets a few shots in there, and then he basically punches him with a powered-up. It looked like he powered up his fist with his electrical charge, and boom!
Yep. That was cool. That was a cool effect. I really liked that. I mean, the whole fight, it was good. It was seamless. Everybody worked together.
Yeah.
It was just, they played to each of their strengths. It was really good.
Awesome. And then, before we move on too far, just as that fight sequence is starting to happen, we jump back to the time ship where Snart is still locked up. And he works his way down the railing to where the guns are, and he gets a hold of his freeze gun, and he ends up freezing his whole hand.
I know. As soon as I saw him pointing that gun, I was like, wait a minute. How are they going to do this? I was like, maybe they'll just freeze off the cuffs. I was like, that seems a little unrealistic.
That's
and then
what I
when
thought.
they show the hand, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, his hand was huge. It was like caked in ice. And I thought, okay. And then smash on I still, at the moment, I was kind of suspended. What's happening? And then he smashes his hand, and I immediately clutched my own hand. Oh, God, that's gotta hurt.
I know.
I couldn't imagine what that would feel like.
That was so terrible, but that does answer a question.
What's that?
Does his ice gun still freeze things?
Why?
Yes, it does. It's not just a stun gun.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess we haven't seen a lot of that lately.
No, we haven't.
Right. But is that because Snart is kind of becoming a good guy? He's not freezing people anymore.
I think there's a lot of things you can argue about that, including effects, but...
Right. Yeah. Anyway, as you said in our notes here, that's quite the commitment.
Oh, wow, yeah, it was like, ooh.
But he does it just in time for him to come in, because they were, as the fight's ensuing, they got Cronos knocked down, and they're about to kill him, and Snart comes running in. Don't kill him, because it's not Cronos. And everybody's like, huh, what?
What?
He's being reborn, pulls off his mask. Voila, there's good old Heatwave.
There he is. Oh,
yeah.
Another good reveal. I mean, we already knew that one, but it was nice to see the reaction of the rest of the cast.
Team. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, anyway, now before we move on to that, Roz had a couple things going on at the end.
Yeah, this was just the last little bit before we kind of moved to sum up the episode. But it just really struck me of this incarnation of Ra is just how wise he is. And he's been around for a long time, and granted, he just witnessed this incredible scene with technology that he knows does not exist in the world.
Okay. And
so, it's just, I just really liked how he kind of dealt with that. He's like, so you're from the future. And it wasn't really a question. It was a statement. And I was like, yeah, okay. He didn't freak out about it. He wasn't like, how is this happening? He just was like, so you're from the future. Like, yes, I am.
Well, at first I thought he looked to me to be a little bit kind of confused, almost in shock as to what he was witnessing.
I think at first he was, because they do quickly cut to Matt and Abel, and you see this look on his face like, what?
Yeah, and so I'm wondering, though, what does this do to his story and his timeline to be witnessing all this future tech and getting the knowledge of the future, that they're from the future, all the things that Sara tells them? what does this do? I mean, this could tie back into Arrow. We could see him come back to Arrow with all this new knowledge and be even more of a badass villain for them to contend with.
But could we? Because he's dead.
Yeah,
and there's no Lazarus Pit.
So then did this affect, maybe it already happened, and the Ra's al Ghul that we did see on Arrow was the Ra's al Ghul with all this knowledge already.
That's what we see. This is where it gets confusing. Because that has yet to happen, we have to assume he has that knowledge, but because we've already seen it in the past and they haven't, at that point, they had not yet come back to this time period, that begs the question, did he really know at that point? So it's timey-wimey.
Well, one last point about him, though. The second time I enjoyed it even more when Sarah gives him the knowledge of his second daughter. Her name is Nissa or whatever, and the camera pans to Ra's, and you just see him smile. We have never seen Ra's al Ghul smile.
That's a good point. I didn't really think of that. We have not.
I mean, it took all the evilness away from him. He did not look evil at all. He looked like a proud father or something. It was.
Yeah.
So, we go from that point to now they're back on the ship, and we've got Heatwave in a glass cage, obviously some kind of prison.
Yep. Looks like the Waverider's version of the brig.
Yeah. And the team is all discussing what are they going to do with him.
I know. They think it's an opportunity. I don't understand how they're going to reform him.
Well, that's my question. Is that possible? Because it seems like he's had a long, long time to stew in all of this anger and hatred to way beyond the point of no return.
Yeah, that's the question. I guess that's part of what we'll find out in the coming episodes. I hope they drag it out though, not in a bad way, but just in a believable way, because if he all of a sudden becomes like they become best friends again next episode, I'm not gonna buy that.
No, it's gonna be too quick. Yeah. There's gotta be a lot of damage control, a lot of repair work to be done here.
Yeah, they're gonna have to do something.
Yeah, and like you're asking, did the Time Masters really turn him against the team, or did Snart by betraying him? And I really believe that it was the betrayal of Snart.
I do too.
That initiated everything, and then the Time Masters took that and used it as an advantage to turn Mick into Cronos.
I completely agree. I think they saw something they could exploit and use to their advantage, and they jumped at it.
What I did like, though, is that everybody else, all except for Snart, everybody else was defending Mick in some way or other to try to find redemption for him. They all had a reason or two to try to redeem him.
Yeah.
And that was cool. That was actually really touching. Everybody was like, he's part of the team, we've got to help him, we've got to bring him back. I loved that they all felt that except for Snart. Snart's obviously still reeling from his emotions, but I love that the rest of the team was feeling that, because that's kind of what I was feeling. The first time we saw the reveal, when he pulled the mask off and that whirlwind of emotions hit, that Cronos is Heatwave, I realized something. How much I was missing Heatwave being part of this team and being on this show. I knew I missed him, but I didn't realize how much I was missing him, and that there was something missing from this show and this team, and it was Heatwave.
Yeah, I mean, I've missed him too. I don't want them to turn him around too fast, because I think that's unrealistic. Because of everything that's happened, but I'm glad that he's back. I didn't want him to be gone. I was sad when he was gone.
Well, that's my point. Like, I don't want him to turn into happy-go-lucky, here's some flowers kind of guy. Like, he still needs to be the dark, brooding, I want to burn stuff.
Exactly.
Kind of guy. It's just so, I want to see that develop into bringing him back to just to that point.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
That would be cool.
And now we go on to Rip Hunter having a little surprise for Snart by sitting him down in the chair and...
That was so great. I can't believe he's complaining, though. He's like, I didn't sign up for that. I'm like, really? You're getting your hand back. Stop complaining.
Well, yeah, because Rip says I stole a DNA sample from all of you. I'm assuming when he had them all knocked out at first.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so it was funny. And it was just kind of funny because you see Snart, when the machine first, he goes, ow!
I know!
Ow, like a little kid, ow!
That was so great. I'm just like... Well, not even that. It's just like, it was funny because of the reaction, but in the same way, it's like, if you were really regenerating and regrowing a hand, I'm pretty sure it would hurt a lot more than just, ow. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I have to wonder. I have no idea. I don't know what regenerating a hand is. Like, it looked like it was being organically 3D printed.
That's what it looked like. It was very cool. It was a really cool effect.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. So I have no idea if that would hurt or not. You would imagine it would, but I can't imagine that you would be left awake for it. They would knock you out like a surgery, like a normal hospital surgery.
Yeah, comic book science.
Hey, maybe it's medicine from the future, the vanishing point. So who knows how advanced it is, right?
That's true. I think that's definitely a valid point.
And then, now, we're coming to a point that people have been upset about and complaining about and wishing it was done and not happening on the show, me included, and I believe you, is the Kendra and Ray romance.
Yeah, I wasn't actually on board with it at all at first either. But I was okay with it this episode.
Because?
It was more believable because they had more time together. So to me, that was actually more believable that they would actually have these feelings for each other. Whereas before, it was kind of like, that seems convenient. I mean, I guess I could see that emotions are high in this kind of an environment, blah, blah, blah. But this time it felt a little bit more believable to me.
I am going to say yes.
What? You agree?
Well, yeah, because, exactly as you said, they had 2 years of living together, relying on each other for support, companionship, and survival. 2 years is more than enough time to develop a relationship. It's not forced. It's not forced on us as the viewers. It's not forced on the show or on the characters. It is believable that it would happen. So when they did kiss and have that little fling in the bed at the end there, it looked believable. I was completely content with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. Let's see how everybody else feels about it.
Yeah.
Because
a lot of people liked it, but
I still kind of feel in my other point that romance maybe is not quite needed on this show yet. Because we need to allow the characters to develop. We need to let us get to know them as individuals, to get connected emotionally to the characters as individuals. Meaning a season or two, like a full season would be great, like 22 episodes or whatever, so a season or two, then introduce romance because we will be more apt to accept it, more open, more interested because we have now connected to these characters emotionally. Mm-hmm. That's my point.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with anything you said. I just, on this particular episode, it actually felt like it worked.
So you got one more point here, Harley, before we get to our next section?
Yeah, so this is kind of how they finished off the episode with saying about how they were going to go get Vandal Savage and they were going to stop him or die trying. But I don't think that's going to happen because we have too many more episodes to go. So they're going to go after him in the next episode, but they can't stop him. They also can't die trying. So
why would they write in finalizing words like that? We're going to stop him or die trying.
Yeah, I did not like that. I did not think that was a good word choice on the writer's part. Because it's not going to happen.
Well, they seem to, as much fun as this episode was, I think the writers and their dialogue and a few of their plot points did struggle because it brings us to our newfound section of the show, Flash's nitpick of the week, and instead of me just coming up with a nitpick, we have both come up with a couple.
Yep.
Form of water.
All right, Harley. What nitpick are we going to start with?
Why don't we start with, let's start with Stein and Jax.
Okay.
Just kind of go in the order we've got them set out here.
All right. So, this was my big one. So, yeah, we'll start with the big ones. We have the one big one and a couple minor ones.
Yeah.
All right. So here's my nitpick of the week. Dr. Stein and Jax decide to merge on the ship. Jax questions the possibility of exploding in the ship. And what's Stein's response? It's preferable to losing our friends. What? So you'd rather blow up the ship and kill everyone than, what, lose your friends to Cronos shooting them? And then they go and merge anyway, and not a hint of explosion, and yet Firestorm goes blasting through the doors in a huge explosion. Does that not jeopardize the ship's stability more so than them merging?
I would think so. I don't think you should have blasted those doors down, personally.
So there's one giant nitpick, because it was a big deal a couple episodes ago. We were complaining we haven't seen Firestorm for a while, and they refused to merge because they're worried about the ship exploding when they merge. That's one part of the nitpick. And then Stein's response is absolutely nonsense, because Cronos is in a firefight shooting them and they're losing. So he says he basically decides he'd rather chance blowing up the ship where they all die than losing their friends to Cronos shooting. It really, there was no option that is a win out of that.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was a little weird.
And then the third part of it is, yeah, here they are worried about explosions and stuff, and yet they go Firestorm blasting through the door, causing a massive explosion without a care in the world that it could jeopardize the stability of the ship. So, 3 parts.
Yeah,
Tell me
exactly.
what you think, Carly. What do you
I don't disagree with you, because the only way I could think of to counter that, and this entire scene in and of itself sort of negates all of this, but I mean, because we do see later, because we don't see them merge when they're on the ship, but we do see when they're on Nanda Parbat, there's a little bit of a fireball, like, after they merge, or like when they're merging. But I was thinking, okay, well maybe Stein's just being cautious, worrying that if they merge and that happens, they'll ignite like some oxygen or something that's flammable that's on board the ship. But then they blast through the doors and nothing happens. They merge, which is fine, and nothing happens. And so I was like, okay, well, that was the only thing I could come up with to counter it. But all of his comments in that scene kind of contradict my argument. So.
Well, if they're worried about igniting gases, then you would think shooting blasts from his arms
would be a good plan. Yeah. Exactly. Which is why I thought they were trying not to merge on the ship, and then they do it anyway, and I was like, okay, whatever.
I have just a little side note. When they did blast through the door and in comes Firestorm, did he not look real cartoony to you? Like, almost like comic book looking, kind of weird?
I didn't really notice that. Not at that point.
You'll have to go back and rewatch it, because he had this weird outline to him, and it was all colored in, like, pastel looking. It didn't look like an actor with effects built around him. It looked like an entire effect. I don't know. It was
probably just bad CG.
Yeah, it was weird. He looked cartoony. He looked like a walking comic.
Might have been exactly what it was going on.
Yeah.
Probably bad CG. That's where I'd put my money.
All right. Now, the second nitpick. And this is the continuing one, the overarching one that keeps driving me crazy. The Waverider shows up in the middle of the day during Ray and Kendra's picnic, lands in the park. There were people, just before the ship shows up, there's a shot of Ray and Kendra sitting on their picnic blanket, and I counted at least 5 people walking back and forth on the path behind them and around them. Then suddenly the ship shows up, and then we go back to a shot of Ray and Kendra. Everybody's gone. And you see the ship land. The park's empty. Yeah. Okay, first of all, where'd the people go? Second of all, somebody would have seen this gigantic spaceship land in the park in broad daylight. Uncloaked.
I agree. They do at least give you the UFO sighting.
Which was mentioned back on Cronos' ship. the computer states to him that there's been a UFO sighting in 1960, Hub City, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and that's when he's like, oh, your friends aren't as clever as they think.
Okay, so
it's like, well, at least they acknowledge that someone saw it.
They acknowledge it, sure. Yeah, they acknowledged it and made a funny quip about it. But come on.
I agree, it's still a bit ridiculous, but at least they acknowledged it. I just have to say, they did at least acknowledge it.
All right. Now, our third and final nitpick, we actually had to rewatch the opening sequence because we weren't sure. We see Rip Hunter say that they are going to the year 2147, decades before Savage conquers the world, making it sound like it's like years and years, like hundreds of years or tons of years.
At least maybe a century, even though he says decades.
Yeah, because the way he says it, decades before Savage conquers the world. And it turns out that Savage conquers the world in 2166, a mere 19 years.
Doesn't even technically qualified as decades.
No,
it's not even two.
It's not even 2 decades. So what the heck? What?
Yeah, I had that same nitpick because as soon as he said that 2147, I was like, wait, I could have sworn that it's 2166 that he conquers the world. So how is this so far in advance?
And we had to rewatch it because we started questioning ourselves. Well, maybe it's 26.
Yeah, I was
something.
like, maybe I misheard it. Exactly. Nope.
Anyway, guys, that's our 3 nitpicks of the week.
Yep.
All right. So before we get to feedback, we got a couple points in closing here because they didn't really fit anywhere in the timeline, but we wanted to talk about them. I had a question with Mick being trained by the Time Masters. Mm-hmm. Was he trained as a Time Master or trained as just a bounty hunter? And if he was trained as a Time Master, does that then mean he could essentially replace Rip? If they manage to reform him and something happens to Rip, could he then become the Time Master of the Waverider?
You know, that's a great question, and I was kind of wondering that myself because he has to know enough about time to be able to travel through it, just as the Time Masters do, except he's a bounty hunter. So maybe he got less of the formal, you know how when, it felt very like Admiral-like training, like what Rip was going through when we saw his flashbacks, even though they were technically flash forwards, you know, that whole sequence. Mm-hmm. So to me that was it was more militarized, it almost felt like naval in a way. I've never been in the military, but to me that was just kind of like the feel that I got from it. Yep. More like and that, I think maybe that would, like, Mick Rory got a different training. He got the bounty hunter version of training where they learn the same core principles, but the way that they have to present themselves and do things is a bit different. One would be very, from a captain's perspective, you're learning how to lead, how to be, you know, lead a crew, like kind of be in the military, whereas the bounty hunters, you're all out for yourself, so you just need to know the ins and outs of the time travel and be able to get in and out without screwing stuff up. But you're not actually, it's just different. It's the same training, but it's different, if you know what I mean. So.
Yeah, I think I feel the same as you, is where it feels to me more like bounty hunter training. They probably have different levels of training. You can train to be a time master, you can train to be a time engineer, you can train to be a time ship mechanic, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like there could be different levels in different ways. I mean, they still have to know the ins and outs of it, but I don't know that it was quite to the extent maybe that Rip has.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, you had a closing point here about Ray's character development, why don't you?
Oh yeah, so I kind of liked his character development. He went through a lot in the course of one episode, but he actually had the time to go through it, kind of, if you think about it. Mm-hmm. Because we see him he has to accept several different scenarios over the course of this episode, and they're all very life-altering. I mean, because once they get stranded, he kind of goes from being able to accept that and find some sort of happiness to kind of defiance about being back on the team and how, you know, the fact that he was picked up and he's like, well, I was just, you know, getting used to this life and getting settled in this life and I have midterms to grade and that whole thing. And then then on Nanda Parbat, he's like offering himself up. Maybe he's like, I'll do it. I'll step up. I'll take one for the team. And you're like, okay, you didn't want to be a part of the team, and now all of a sudden you're like, I'll do this. I'll take one for the team, guys. And then at the end, he misreads Kendra, and he's trying to give her space. And so he's kind of pushing people away and being more in denial, and it's almost like a reverse of the stages of grief, actually, in a lot of ways. But I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, no, it was good. I guess character growth and fall apart and learn and accept and regrow again. Like, he went through quite a mini story arc for himself in 45 minutes. They did a good job with it. Yeah,
I thought it was all very believable too. In a way.
Yeah.
It was the only weird part was the point where he doesn't want to be on the team, and then all of a sudden they're in Nanda Parbat, and he's like, I'll do it, guys, I've got this. Take one for the team. I was like, okay, that's a quick change. But.
Well, I think it's just because he was down in the dumps a little bit. I mean, essentially he's one of the ones that was the most excited about being part of this team from the beginning, so.
That's true.
I think he was just maybe finding that feeling again.
Yeah. Okay. That was all I had. I just liked that. I liked his growth.
Yeah, no, I agree with you for sure. Well, and one final closing point, I was thinking about something today, and we have Time Masters on this show, and we have this team, and they all go through time, changing things, doing things, interacting with time. How does this play into the Flash's TV show? So you had to have watched Flash this week. You've watched it, haven't you, Harley?
I did,
okay.
Yes.
How does this play into the Flash's idea of time wraiths going after people who alter things in the timeline?
Does Harrison Wells not state specifically speedsters who alter time?
Is it only speedsters?
I think that's what they were implying. And there's been a lot of discussion about whether the Wraith is a decayed, Flash suit or something.
Yes.
Have you seen that stuff?
I was the one who started talking about that.
Oh, was that you that brought it up originally? I was like, I remember seeing it, but I don't know who brought it up.
Well, if they play my feedback on Central City this week, you'll see it. That's what I talk about, because, although we're not talking about Flash on this podcast, there's a Black Flash in the Flash comics.
That's right.
And the Black Flash runs around, and he only attacks other speedsters, and he basically drains them of their life force, essentially aging them instantly, which is what we saw on the Flash. We saw the Wraith touch him, and it started to age him very quickly. And if you looked really closely, the Wraith had on a mask, a very Flash-like looking mask. So I think the TV show was incorporating the Black Flash idea.
Interesting. I know for a while a lot of people were saying Zoom might be able to be the Black Flash until they said he was Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. So
interesting.
Anyway, all right, well,
I thought they specifically said speedsters, but I do think it's a very fascinating idea. Given the way that this show plays with time, I don't think they'll be able to introduce that because they'd be flying around all over the place.
Right. Okay, it was just something I thought of today, so cool.
That is cool though. I had not thought of that. That was a good point.
Well, guess what time it is, Harley?
Time for feedback.
Time for feedback.
Planetary powers, activate!
All right, Harley, so we got a little bit of feedback today. We got a pair of emails and a voicemail.
We did.
So because we got 2 in 1, let's start with an email. You want to start with Kelly, Master Wordsmith?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right.
So Kelly writes us saying, on the West Coast, and it's strange that my East Coast would have already seen this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet that is always weird. Stay off Twitter.
Hey, I'm on the West too, so I feel you, Kelly. We're always a couple hours behind.
Yeah, I watch it live, so I don't tweet it live though. So if you follow me on Twitter, you don't have to worry about that. But I do go in that Facebook comment and try and comment along with people live. So Anyway, she continues, Sarah's my favorite character of all the universes and time periods. She's always kicking ass in a cool way. I agree. She is. She made me a little angry this week, but, yay, we finally got an episode where the team worked as, wait for it, a team.
Yes.
I know. Lesson learned, there is no I in team. Even after the fight, they're still working as a team. I agree. I think we finally got the team to come together. Ra's al Ghul is wise beyond years. Yes. Yes, he is. And oh, Ray, the first fiancé dies, then Felicity loves another man. Now Kendra is either strike 3 or a home run. Home run it is, but still not on this ship, but it's setting sail. Yeah, Kelly, I don't think you're alone.
Oh, poor Ray, I know.
See you in the funny pages, Kelly, a.k.a. Master Wordsmith.
Yeah, oh, thanks for that email, Kelly. It's nice to have you with us every single week.
Yes, I liked your comments. There were a lot of good comments in there.
All right, so we've got a voicemail from our friend Jeff Gentry, Mr. X-Force 11, coming from Gotham Undercover, his podcast covering Gotham. I'll pull that up right now for us.
This is X-Force 11 calling in from Gotham City for tomorrow's Legends. Hello, Wonder Twins. I was really thrilled to see what took place in the last episode of Legends of Tomorrow. I thought it was some good action, some good plot development, and I've really grown to like the series over time. I was scared that it was going to be too action-filled and too light, but it has developed a good tone to it. And I'm just wondering how many of the legends we're going to see continue into next year, because I'm interested to see who stays and who the new legends are added. We've got some interesting prospects of ones being added this season, and maybe they stay, maybe they're just there temporary, I just don't know, but I'm really looking forward to it. I like the idea of Kendra really choosing her own destiny and choosing who she loves, but it makes me a little sad that it wasn't Cisco who really had those feelings for her. But, I'm happy for her and Ray that maybe she can spend this lifetime with him and he can have somebody that he loves and they can spend that time together. I think it will be interesting to see how that works out. I really enjoyed the league scenes. It made me really think, okay, how is this going to work out, and how's he going to plan? Ra's is going to plan, Ra's al Ghul going to plan out his future, knowing what he knows now, and how much is that going to change? It's one of those fun things about time travel that really make you think. How is this influencing what's going to happen in Sarah's character in the past? And will that change her character in the future because he knows what she's going to be like in the future? It just brings up really cool questions. I can't wait to hear what y'all have to say about the episode. Talk to you next time.
Wow. Wow, X-Force 11, thanks for that really in-depth voicemail. You really dove into some key points there, and
oh yeah.
Yeah, I think what you were in the first half of your message there, just talking about how Legends, being worried that it was going to be just heavy on action and light on story and character development. I agree with you. I wasn't sure going in, but they have found a way to develop the characters and get a storyline going and creating connections and stuff that we can start feeling for. So yeah, I agree with you. It's found its groove and they're developing from there. Now your points about who's going to stay come season 2, we've all heard the rumors that it's going to be a whole new cast of characters next season, or we're only going to keep half of them, or are they going to kill some of them off, or some of them going to go back to their own timelines and just be done with the mission? What's going on? I am right there with you on being super interested as to what's going to happen come the end of this season and the start of season 2. What do you have to say, Harley?
Yeah, Jeff had some really good comments in there, and I liked a lot of those. And as as for the series as a whole, they've kind of tackled some darker subject matter than I thought that they would. I thought it was going to be probably closer to The Flash in terms of like lightheartedness and less like Arrow, and it's really kind of in the middle. Although I guess these days Flash is playing with some pretty dark stuff as well, but it's definitely a little darker than I thought it would be. And I really like our team as it is, and I don't want to see them go, so I hope that they don't get rid of them. I'd like, if they maybe they get rid of someone or introduce a couple of new characters, yeah, I'd be okay with that, but I don't want a whole brand new team. I've started to grow to get attached to these characters, so.
This gives me an idea, because I'm going to ask you right now,
okay,
and maybe you can put up a new poll, but I want to ask you right now, if someone is expendable on this show, this team, who, for you, Harley, do you think would be the one that they could be without?
Honestly, right now, as much as I missed him, and now that he's back, Heatwave is the most logical, as a part of our actual team. Vandal Savage I would like to see them wrap that up at the end of this season. I would like to see a new villain.
Right. Okay.
As far as the others, the only thing, and that I do kind of hate to say it, Kendra probably is pretty expendable because Carter's already dead, and if they put, I don't know whether or not they put the finishing touches on Vandal Savage, I feel like that has to bring some sort of resolution or finality to her character.
That is a very good point.
So I don't know what that would be. I don't know if that would be her death, if her just going her own separate way. Maybe we run into Carter again. I don't know what that really is.
Well, I'm kind of curious what everyone else thinks. I don't know, maybe you can make it part of your couch session too or something. I'm really, really curious. If we're all loving our team and we love all our characters, who do you as listeners think is the most expendable? Who would be the last one that you want to keep on this team?
Well, yeah, let's just throw that out there as a question right now.
Yeah.
So, send us in your feedback and your thoughts. Include that in your feedbacks for next week. Mm-hmm. In addition to your comments on the show, let us know who's the most expendable character.
Yeah. Anyway, well, again, X-Force 11, thank you so much for your wonderful, in-depth, and very thorough voicemail. It was really, really great to hear you on our show, because I hear you all the time on Central City and Arrow Squad, and I really appreciate you coming over to our show for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I'll have to do the same and pay you a visit on Gotham Undercover, because I watched the show. I'm just as heavily involved with it, and I've listened to you a couple times, so I really should call in.
I send them feedback fairly often. I tend to get behind, and unfortunately Gotham, for me, as much as I love it, I try not to get too behind, but it is one of those shows that I will push to the weekend, and so I'll miss their feedback deadlines.
Right.
So, but I got on last week, so.
Cool. All right, well, we've got one more final little message from our friend Green Butterfly, and I feel bad for our dear friend. All this time travel, jumping back and forth, spaceships to countryside, she has gone and caught a cold or something. She is not feeling well.
Oh, no.
So she didn't send us a voicemail this time. She sent us an email, and I'll let you read that, Harley.
All right. It says, "Hi, Martin and Jess. Green Butterfly is under the weather today, so I can't send in my normal recording. Oh, we're sorry you don't feel well, Justina. I had to send you a quick thought because it was a phenomenal episode for my favorite character, Sarah. I totally understand her decision to go to Nanda Parbat. She could have killed someone in 1958 due to bloodlust. The League was a logical group to help her. Episode gets 9 out of 10 Nissa references. Have a great day, Justina."
Nissa references. Love it.
I had a funny feeling that was her rating was gonna incorporate Nissa.
And once again, she gives us a rating on our only one. Everyone else, all the other podcasts do ratings, and we keep forgetting. So I don't know if we want to incorporate it or not. But thanks, Justina. I hope you get better. Thanks for still finding a way to send us a message. That's awfully sweet of you.
I know. And we didn't really talk about the bloodlust piece at all.
No, well, yeah, I guess we didn't, but it makes sense.
I mean, it was kind of a small part. I mean, but I did like that she was able to gain more control over it after being back in the League of Assassins.
Well, Roz does mention, he says, "Oh, I'm glad the herbs and the training have helped you get control over it."
Yeah, he did. She did say that.
Maybe will teach her she might not have it from now on. Who knows?
Yeah, or at least she'll be able to control it better.
Interesting.
Because he ends up, actually, that brings up a point, because he does end up not kicking her out of League, but he releases her from her obligation because she has the desire to kill, but she also wants to show mercy, and she's too conflicted, and so he can't keep her there for that reason.
Cool. Wow, you made us think a little bit.
Exactly. Thanks.
Well, Harley, I think we managed to squeeze out another long podcast, but you know what? This was a good episode. It was entertaining, and we've been gone for a couple weeks, so I don't mind so much. Hopefully our listeners are happy to hear we're back as well.
Yeah, it was a great episode, and there's a lot to talk about, so we had to make sure we covered it all.
Exactly. Well, if you want to join the discussion, you can submit feedback via email to cybercastfan@gmail.com. Please try to get it back to us by 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain on Fridays following the show. You can also join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Tomorrow's Legends. That's where you'll find us. We've got a nice little community building there with some chatter and some talking, so totally love everybody being on there with us. You can also follow us on our Twitter handle at Cybercast. All of these details and more can be found on our website, tomorrowslegends.libsyn.com, where you can also subscribe to us on iTunes, download episodes, leave comments about each episode, and while you're in iTunes, if you happen to go there, please rate us and leave a review.
Fantastic.
That is all for us, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Harley, it was fun to be back with you. I've missed you. I've missed the show. And now we got quite a few weeks to go.
I know. We've got a little while, and then, then we'll be on a long hiatus, so. We'll try not to think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, not yet.
It was good to be back.
Definitely was. Alright, guys, thanks for tuning in to us. We will see you in 7 days. Flash is out.
Harley Quinn signing off.